They say some stories are not just fiction, but warnings. This one is real, and if you stay with me until the end, you will see how lust can build an empire of lies, how betrayal can shatter even the strongest homes, and how it seems like victory can turn to ashes overnight. This is the story of a young housemaid who thought she had conquered the world when she seduced a wealthy politician. But the mansion she claimed was never hers, and the throne she fought for would one day crumble under her feet. Her name was Chinyu. Before we begin, subscribe, share and like this video. Chinyu was just 22 when she left her village. Her family had nothing. Her father had died when she was 15, leaving her mother to raise 5 children in a leaking mud house. Schooling had ended early for her, not because she lacked intelligence, but because poverty had written a different script for her life. By the time her friends were filling out university forms, she was sweeping compounds, scrubbing toilets, and washing plates to keep food on her family's table. One day, luck, or what she thought was luck, came her way. A cousin in Lagos arranged a housekeeping job for her in the home of a wealthy politician, Chief Adewale, a man whose name often made headlines. He was powerful, well-connected, feared by rivals, and admired by the press for his wealth and charisma. His mansion in Ikoyi was nothing like Chinyu had ever seen before. Tall iron gates guarded the compound, with uniformed security men at every corner. The floors gleamed like mirrors, the curtains fell heavy like royalty's robes, and the dining table was longer than her family's entire house. To Chinyu it was paradise, but paradise came with its own rules. Chief's wife, Madame Funk, ran the household like a general. She was beautiful in an intimidating way, always dressed in rich fabrics, always with a look of disapproval resting somewhere on her face. She rarely spoke to Chinyu directly, only gave instructions through the senior maid. "You must never disturb Chief," the senior maid warned on her first day. "You do your work quietly. You see nothing, you hear nothing." Chinyu nodded obediently, but deep down, she had already begun to notice the gap between Madame Funk's icy presence and Chief Adewale's warm, commanding energy. The first midnight visit happened by accident. Chief had returned late from a meeting, his footsteps echoing through the marble hallway. Chinyu had just finished cleaning the kitchen when he entered, loosening his tie, his face heavy with exhaustion. "You," he said, his deep voice startling her. "What's your name again?" "Chinyu, sir." She lowered her eyes, clutching her cleaning rag. He studied her for a moment, then waved toward the kettle. "Make me tea. The wife is asleep, and I can't disturb her." She moved quickly, hands trembling as she boiled the water, stirred the sugar, and placed the steaming cup before him. He watched her closely, his gaze lingering longer than it should. "You're not like the others," he said, sipping slowly. "Sir, you carry yourself differently, quiet but proud. Where are you from?" She told him about her village, her family, her struggles. He listened in a way that surprised her. Most rich men never cared about a maid's story. When he finally stood up, he patted her shoulder. "Good girl. You'll go far if you learn to be smart." That night, as Chinyu lay on her small bed in the servants' quarters, his words replayed in her mind. "You'll go far if you learn to be smart." The encounters became frequent. Every few nights, Chief would summon her. Sometimes for tea, sometimes for late-night meals, sometimes just to talk while he unwound from the day's battles. He asked about her dreams, her fears, her desires. He laughed at her village stories, encouraged her when she spoke of wanting more from life. And Chinyu began to notice the hunger in his eyes when they lingered on her face, on her figure. It happened fully one rainy night. The storm rattled the mansion windows, thunder roaring above Lagos. Chinyu brought him his tea as usual, but this time his hand brushed against hers and did not let go. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Her breath caught. She knew it was wrong. He was married, her employer, a man of influence far above her station. But she also knew this was an opportunity. When his lips touched hers, she didn't resist. That night, the housemaid crossed a line she could never uncross. From then on, the mansion became a stage of secrets. By day, she was just another servant, taking orders from Madame Funk. But by night, she was Chief's comfort, his secret obsession. He showered her with small gifts, at first perfumes, jewelry, money folded neatly into envelopes. "Don't ever tell anyone," he warned. "Not even the other maids. If Funk finds out, it will destroy everything." She nodded, but inside she was already dreaming. Dreaming of replacing Funk. Dreaming of wearing the silk robes, of sitting at the head of the dining table, of being addressed as Madame Adewale. It was a dangerous dream, but the taste of power was intoxicating. Madame Funk was not blind. She began to notice the subtle changes: Chinyu's new perfume, her sudden glow, her confidence when walking through the house. One afternoon, Funk cornered her in the kitchen. "You," she said coldly, her eyes sharp as knives. "You think I don't see the way you look at my husband? Be careful, girl. Don't mistake kindness for something else." Chinyu bowed her head, murmuring apologies. But in her heart, she laughed. "If only you knew," she thought. "I am already what you fear." The midnight visits grew bolder. Chief no longer hid his affection when they were alone. Sometimes he would whisper promises. Other times he would confess his frustrations about Funk. "She doesn't understand me," he said one night, lying back in his armchair. "She cares more about appearances than my happiness. But you, Chinyu, you remind me of something real. Something I lost a long time ago." She touched his hand gently. "Then let me give it back to you, Chief." And so, the housemaid became more than a servant. She became a secret queen in the shadows of the mansion, intoxicated by the thought that one day, the shadows would turn to light. But the truth is this: every secret has a cost, and every lie demands payment. Chinyu did not know it then, but the very nights that filled her with pride were building the stage for her greatest humiliation. Because while she dreamed of replacing Madame Funk, Chief was already preparing for something else entirely. And when the truth finally came, it would break her more than poverty ever did. The midnight visits became an affair, no longer secret glances in the hallway, but stolen authority in the mansion. And when lust meets ambition, the lines between love and manipulation blur until they are indistinguishable. You have watched this far? Subscribe, share with your friends. The story has only just began. Chinyu adjusted quickly to her new role. She was still a housemaid by title, but in her heart she had already ascended. Chief Adewale's attention gave her wings. She no longer walked like a servant. She walked with her chin high, her voice firmer, her eyes daring. The other maids noticed. "She's different these days," one whispered in the laundry room. "Have you seen her clothes? New shoes, new handbags. From where?" "Maybe she has a sugar daddy," another replied, rolling her eyes. "But mark my words, one day Madame will find out." Their gossip didn't matter to Chinyu. What did matter was the growing boldness she felt when Madame Funk was in the room. She no longer trembled under the woman's gaze. Sometimes, she even dared to meet her eyes with the faintest smirk, a silent rebellion that only she understood. The affair itself blossomed like fire in dry grass. Chief grew addicted to her presence. His political life was filled with stress, betrayal, and endless battles. Every night, the newspapers wrote about new scandals, new enemies, new promises he hadn't kept. But in the quiet of his mansion, when the world was asleep, Chinyu was his escape. "You don't judge me," he told her once, after a particularly rough day. "You just listen. That's why I keep you close." She touched his cheek and smiled. "I was made for you, Chief." He rewarded her devotion with more than just words. Soon, envelopes stuffed with cash found their way into her hands. Jewelry boxes appeared in her drawer. One evening, a driver even delivered a brand new phone to her quarters, sleek and expensive, something she had never dared dream of owning. "You deserve it," Chief said, watching her eyes sparkle with delight. Every gift deepened her sense of power. Every kiss, every promise, every whispered secret convinced her that she was no longer just a maid. She was Madame in waiting. But power is a dangerous perfume. It lingers on the skin, and others will smell it. Madame Funk was no fool. She had been married to Chief for 20 years. She knew his patterns, his habits, his weaknesses. She had seen the way he looked at Chinyu, how his late nights grew more frequent, how Chinyu's confidence bloomed unnaturally fast. One morning, Funk walked into the dining room earlier than usual. Chinyu was there, setting the table, humming softly. "Good morning, madam," Chinyu said, bowing slightly. Funk's eyes narrowed. "Since when did maids start humming in my house as if they owned it?" Chinyu froze, her heart pounding. "You're forgetting yourself," Funk continued coldly. "I built this home with my husband. Don't think for 1 second that you can scatter it." For a brief moment, Chinyu's mask slipped. Fear flickered across her face. But as soon as Madame walked out, she straightened her back, her lips curling into a private smile. One day, she thought, one day this will be my house. That thought became an obsession. She started wearing Madame's perfumes, sneaking sprays when no one was watching. Sometimes she lingered in Madame's room after cleaning, sitting at her vanity, imagining herself in the silk robes and diamond earrings. At night, when Chief held her close, she whispered dangerous things. "Why do you still keep her here? You deserve peace. She doesn't love you the way I do." Chief sighed. "It's not that simple, Chinyu. A politician's wife is more than a wife. She's part of the image. Removing her would bring chaos." "But what about me?" she pressed, her voice trembling. "Do I mean nothing to you?" He kissed her forehead. "You mean more than you know. But patience, my love. Patience." Patience was never Chinyu's strength. The turning point came one evening after Chief returned from a heated political meeting. His enemies had attacked his credibility in the press, accusing him of corruption, misuse of funds, and infidelity. He was furious, pacing in his study, his voice echoing off the walls. "They want to destroy me. They think they can bring me down with lies. If Funk hears more of this, she'll start asking questions." Chinyu touched his arm gently. "Then give me a reason to keep quiet, Chief." He stopped, staring at her. "What do you mean? You think your enemies are dangerous? What if your wife finds out about us? What if the press finds out?" She let the words hang in the air like poison. "I could destroy you with one whisper." It was the first time she had dared to weaponize their secret. Chief's eyes darkened, a mix of anger and fear. But before he could explode, she softened her tone. "I would never do that to you," she whispered, kissing his hand. "But don't forget, Chief, I'm the one who keeps your secret safe. I'm not just a maid. I'm your shield." From that night on, the balance shifted. Chief was no longer just her lover. He was also her hostage. Blackmail became her unspoken power. She never demanded directly, but her words carried threats wrapped in silk. "I need new clothes. People are starting to notice mine are old. I need a bigger allowance. How else will I keep quiet if others start asking questions? Take me out sometimes." "Why should Madame be the only one seen with you?" Chief obliged, torn between guilt, lust, and fear of exposure. He began sneaking her out to quiet restaurants, shielding her from the cameras but indulging her demands. For Chinyu, every concession was a victory. She was no longer dreaming of being Madame. She was living it, piece by piece. But Madame Funk was relentless. Her suspicions grew sharper. She noticed Chief's increasing irritability, the missing money, the whispers among staff. She even noticed Chinyu's new jewelry, pieces too expensive for a maid's salary. One night, she confronted Chief directly. "Are you seeing someone else?" she demanded, her voice trembling with restrained fury. Chief avoided her eyes. "Funk, don't start. You're destroying this home. I have stood by you through scandals, through betrayals, through everything. And this is how you repay me." Chief raised his voice. "Enough. Do you want the press to hear that the great Madame Adewale can't even control her own husband? Keep your dignity, Funk. Don't embarrass me." Funk left the room in tears. But Chinyu, listening from the shadows, felt triumph course through her veins. "She's breaking," she thought. "Soon I'll take her place completely." But what Chinyu didn't realize was that every move she made was tightening a noose around her own neck. Chief's enemies had eyes everywhere. They saw his late-night disappearances, whispered of the young maid who had become more than a servant. Some even took photographs, waiting for the right moment to unleash them. And Chief himself, though blinded by lust, was not entirely foolish. He knew that one day, Chinyu's ambition might outgrow her usefulness. So quietly, secretly, he began making plans. For now, though Chinyu basked in her new power, she wore Madame's perfumes openly, strutted through the mansion with her head held high, and whispered into Chief's ear like a queen feeding her king counsel. But the higher she rose, the further she would eventually fall. And that fall was closer than she realized. If the first part of this story showed the seduction, and the second revealed the power of secrets, then this chapter is about betrayal, the moment when ambition finally breaks a home. It is the rise of Chinyu, the housemaid who dared to dream of sitting where only Madame once sat. But what she thought was victory was nothing more than a glittering trap. The breaking point came on a humid Saturday morning. Madame Funk had woken up early, as usual, her head wrapped in silk, her posture regal even in a nightgown. She had endured weeks of silence from Chief, of whispers she could not prove, of cold stares from the girl she once dismissed as nothing. But that morning, she saw what she could no longer deny. Chinyu was in the sitting room, curled on the sofa, sipping juice from one of the crystal glasses reserved only for family. She wore a silk wrapper, Funk's silk wrapper. Funk's voice cut through the air like a blade. "What are you doing there?" Chinyu froze, then slowly rose, her face a careful mask of innocence. "Good morning, madam. That is my wrapper. That is my glass. Who gave you permission to touch anything in this house?" Before Chinyu could answer, Chief entered the room, adjusting his agbada, irritation on his face. "What is all this noise early in the morning? Ask her." Funk's voice trembled with rage. "Ask your maid why she sits like the mistress in my house. Ask her where she gets the audacity." Chief's eyes darted between the two women. He saw Chinyu's fear, but also her silent plea. And for the first time he made a choice that could never be undone. "Funk, you are overreacting," he said coldly. "If the girl borrowed your wrapper, is it the end of the world? Must you always create drama?" Funk's mouth fell open. "You defend her? You defend a maid against your wife?" Chief's voice rose. "Enough, Funk. If you can't control yourself, maybe you should go stay in your father's house for a while. I need peace, not endless quarrels." The words struck like a hammer. Funk stared at him, tears burning her eyes, then turned without another word and walked upstairs. By evening, she had packed her bags. A driver was ordered to take her to her family's home in Victoria Garden City. Just like that, Madame Funk was gone. Chinyu could hardly believe it. The mansion, once guarded by Funk's sharp presence, now lay open before her. She walked through its corridors with freedom, her footsteps echoing with pride. The staff who once mocked her now bowed, addressing her softly as Madame Chinyu. At Chief's side, she blossomed. They attended small gatherings together, never official political dinners, but quiet parties among allies where whispers carried more power than speeches. Chinyu wore gowns bought from luxury boutiques, her neck heavy with gold, her wrists sparkling with diamonds. Chief introduced her as a close companion. But the way he held her waist, the way he let her speak, the way his eyes followed her every move, it was clear to everyone that the maid had become more than just a companion. Behind closed doors, Chinyu lived her dream. She dined at the long mahogany table, lounged in Funk's armchair, and commanded the maids who once worked beside her. The very drivers who once ignored her now opened doors for her with respect. She was no longer just a servant. She was the madam of the house. But the higher one rises on shaky ground, the closer they are to the fall. Chief Adewale was not the man he had once been. His health began to fail, slowly at first, headaches, fatigue, nights where he collapsed into his chair with his hand pressed to his chest. "Chief, you need to see a doctor," Chinyu said once, genuine worry breaking through her vanity. He waved her off. "It's just stress. Politics will kill a man before sickness does. Don't worry about me." But she did worry because her future depended on him. She began feeding him herbal concoctions from the market, urging him to rest more, even hiring a private doctor once in secret. But Chief remained stubborn. He lived on whiskey, late nights, and endless political scheming. And while Chinyu tried to play the doting partner, her hunger for power only grew. She began to imagine marriage. One evening, as Chief lay stretched across his bed, she curled beside him and whispered, "Why don't you make it official? You and I, the people already know." Chief chuckled, coughing slightly. "You think it's that easy? Divorce, remarry? Politics doesn't forgive a man so quickly. My image is built on stability. Funk may be gone, but on paper, she is still my wife." "But she left you," Chinyu pressed. "She abandoned the home. Doesn't that count for something?" Chief turned to her, his eyes tired but sharp. "Don't be in such a hurry, my love. The world moves slowly, but it moves. You'll have your place one day. For now, enjoy what you have." She smiled outwardly, but inside she burned. One day isn't enough. I want it now. With time, her arrogance reached dangerous heights. She began interfering in Chief's political affairs, giving him advice on which allies to trust, which deals to accept. She spoke loudly in front of his associates, sometimes even correcting him mid-sentence. At first, they laughed at her brazenness, dismissing her as a young mistress playing queen. But the more Chief tolerated it, the more seriously some began to take her. And Funk, watching from afar, seethed. Though she no longer lived in the mansion, she still had eyes inside. Maids loyal to her reported every detail. Chinyu's new clothes, her presence at dinners, her arrogance. Funk said little, but her silence was not surrender. The illusion of power was complete the day Chief took Chinyu to his village. It was a family gathering, a symbolic event where lineage and respect were measured like currency. Traditionally, such occasions were reserved for the wife of the house. But when Chief arrived, it was Chinyu who stepped out of the car in a flowing lace gown, gold jewelry gleaming, her head tied high like royalty. The murmurs were immediate. "Who is she? Is that not the maid we heard about? Has Chief lost his mind?" Chief ignored them all, walking proudly with Chinyu by his side. For her, it was the crowning moment. "I have arrived," she thought. "Even the ancestors must see that I am now the madam." But beneath the celebration, cracks widened. Chief's health worsened. His coughing grew violent, his hands sometimes trembling when he signed documents. He began making quiet trips to the hospital, accompanied only by his driver. Chinyu noticed the secrecy. "Why don't you tell me about your doctor visits?" she asked one night. Chief only smiled faintly. "Some things are not for you to worry about." That answer unsettled her. For the first time, she felt excluded. For the first time, she wondered, what is he hiding? The truth was this: Chief had begun meeting with his lawyer. While Chinyu dreamed of rings and titles, Chief was ensuring his legacy. He was a politician, after all. He knew how quickly mistresses faded, how fast loyalty turned to betrayal. He was not about to gamble his entire empire on a maid's ambition. So quietly, without her knowledge, he reaffirmed his will. The businesses, the properties, the accounts, all of it would pass not to Chinyu, but to his lawful wife, Funk. He signed the papers with a shaky hand, then whispered to his lawyer, "No matter what happens, Funk must remain protected. The girl, she is temporary." Back at the mansion, Chinyu remained oblivious. She paraded her new gowns, flaunted her authority, and scolded the staff with the sharpness of a queen. At night, when she lay beside Chief, she whispered of their future together. Vacations abroad, investments, marriage. Chief smiled faintly, kissed her forehead, and closed his eyes. But deep inside, he knew the end was approaching. And for Chinyu, the throne she thought she had secured was nothing but a gilded chair waiting to vanish beneath her feet. This was just the beginning of something bigger. Subscribe, like, and share. This true story has only just began.